Hello and welcome to the Varietal show. Let me know if the sound's okay and everything. My name is Rory, and you're watching Varietal Literature's YouTube channel, which is a YouTube channel where we kind of just do stuff with narrative. Tuesday nights we do, which isn't tonight, we do old folk tales and fairy tales, which is by far the most popular thing we do. But tonight is for writers and people who like writing or just enjoy that process, or solo tabletop RPGs, which are arguably just games about writing. Because what we're doing here is a write-along. And we're going to play through, we've been playing through for the better half of this year, through a bunch of solo tabletop RPGs. We've been having a good time sort of creating either beginnings of stories, sometimes whole stories. I don't think we're going to get through a whole story today. This is a bit longer and more involved of a game. It came from a request that somebody sent me on Mastodon, which is my first request. But if you do find something on itch.io, or itch.io, as some people call it, feel free to let me know. Mastodon's the easiest place to get a hold of me. I'm Rory Star there. Star with 2 R's, like Ringo Starr, because I think he's hilarious. I will get into how this game works, and we'll get to the writing, but here's what you should know. If you do not care about me explaining this game, and you just want to get to the writing, and you are not watching this live, or you just want to get to the story we came up with at the end, down in the description below there will be little timestamps. You can click on any one that you want, and it will take you to whatever part of the video interests you most. Tonight's content, ghost stories. As GS points out, says, good evening, ghost story tonight. Oh, goody. And Jenna says, hi, good to see you again, Jenna. GS loves the lighthouse pick. I like it too. I got it from, I'm forgetting their name right now, but it's the go-to free photos website that I usually... Unsplash, that's the name of it. Jenna says, yes, super moody. Yeah, I did consider doing, because I sometimes do the whole stream sort of in that style of if we're doing something particularly moody, like I have a space one and whatever, but building the frame you see me in right now is actually an enormous amount of work. It is deceptive how hard it is to make these things. So I didn't really have time to do it today. So we're just going to go with my usual cheerful bookshop. Yeah. Anyways, let's get to describing the game, because that's going to take some time. It's going to take about 10 minutes. But again, if you're not watching this live, jump ahead with the timestamps. Also, because I'm sure not everyone in chat will be engaged, what is your chat's thoughts on ghosts? I personally don't believe in ghosts, but what is your thoughts on ghosts? Do you think you've seen them? Do you think there's anything to them? Do you think they're just wavelengths that only cats can see? And that's what they're staring at? I'm curious. So, this is the main section of the show. It's called Lit Games, stands for literature games. But you can also think of them as expressive games, lyric games, solo tabletop RPGs, things that are basically structured around writing. And the game that we're playing tonight is a game called Lighthouse at the End of the World. And if you know your literature, you'll know that, I believe it's Jules Verne has a book, or at least a short story, but I think it's a book, called Lighthouse at the End of the World, that I've never read. But as far as I know, it's about the same lighthouse that this is about, which is a real lighthouse at, I believe, very far South America. I believe that's... Well, it tells you... I'll read the section where he explains this. The gist of this story, of this game, is you're taking care of a lighthouse way out in the middle of nowhere. The only thing that's nearby is a penal colony. In other words, I mean, it's a bit of a dated concept at this point. They still exist, but not so much that I think people would just know that by name. It's basically like an island for prisoners, is the only thing nearby. And you're basically there because shipping containers and stuff go by, even back in like the 17th century and stuff, go by this area, and you need to keep the lighthouse running. But as a result of its sort of situation, the reason it's there, lots of boats crash. And the gist of this is those boats that crash, some of the spirits remain behind and haunt. And the game is basically, will you lose your mind before you can release the ghosts? So this Jenga tower here, which you may have noticed and thought, why is he putting a Jenga tower where Geralt normally stands, is a part of the game. In many ways, the Jenga tower is our life bar, but what it actually represents is our sanity. And if at any point it collapses, I cannot reset it up on stream, so that's going to be the end of the story. And it's meant to create kind of tension of drawing things and just consistent worry that it's going to fall over. Because it's an awkward angle, I can't really get around to it. So that, if you don't care about the rest of this, that's my sanity bar. The rest is about prompt system for ghost stories in a lighthouse. GS says so Smudge can knock it over. Yeah, he might knock my sanity over. I see Heather Jane is here. Hello, Heather. Stayed up late to join tonight. Well, what time is it where you are? Where we are, it's 6:30. Okay. So, like I said, I'm going to explain the rules. If you're not a person who cares about rules, I don't know, zone out, talk in the chat for about 5, 6, 7 minutes, and then we'll get right to the game. Well, we'll get to the writing. So as I said, Lighthouse at the End of the World is about a real lighthouse that is also the basis of a book by, I believe, Jules Verne of the same name. And it is a game about trying to fight off basically psychosis before you release all these ghosts from punishment. Okay, so I'm going to do some reading on the introduction because I think this game does a really good job. And as I mentioned before, I was specifically requested to try this game for somebody who wanted to try solo tabletop RPGs, was interested in this game, but was a little concerned that they wouldn't know what to do. So that's why I'm taking a little more care with explaining the rules tonight. So it says here, for reasons of your own, you have taken a post watching over the lighthouse at the furthest reaches of civilization. You will maintain the lighthouse so that the world's commerce doesn't dash against the craggy shore of this faraway place. It is a curious thing, this island. It oversees a passage that is at once vital to world trade and as remote as any post on Earth. Many ships have come to ruin in these treacherous waters over the centuries. Your lighthouse is packed to the rafters with salvage from those wrecks, which is a part of the game. We'll get to that. Everything here, your furniture, your silverware, your library, is a mismatched assortment of flotsam and jetsam meant for someplace else. Now that's a confusing sentence, but as he describes in the end of this, I'm not going to read all of it, there was a nonfiction book about this real lighthouse and from the 18th century or something like that. And when they went there, the guy had mismatched silverware. All his silverware was basically collected from crashed boats. So it was just pieces that he'd accumulated over the years. You have neighbors. The adjacent island is home to a penal colony. That matters. The southernmost human settlement in all the world. You interact with them little, though, but they are never completely out of sight nor very far from your thoughts. And you are not alone. Those countless shipwrecks have brought not just salvage to your shores, but the spirits of restless who died in them. There are numerous, 10 at least, maybe more, spirits. The passage of time has worn away any memories of who they once were, and they are by turns friendly, jealous, seductive, and ravenous. You are alive, they are not, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this has one of the best descriptions I've ever seen of what a solo tabletop RPG is. So I'm going to read that, and then we'll do the rules, and then we'll get to writing. Lighthouse at the End of the World is a tabletop role-playing game. Like many role-playing games, it asks you to take on the persona of a fictional character you will create, which we're going to do together today. You will interpret the tools of chance, in this case, dice, a coin, although I'm using what's technically called a D2, but it's just a coin. You can use any coins, but I'm using poker chips, cards, and of course, the Jenga tower that represents our sanity. That's what you need for this game. Unlike many role-playing games, you will interpret the tools of chance and react to the world as your character would, then write down the results. That is, in one sentence, what we're going to do. All these mechanics are about chance prompts that we interpret into a journal written by a character we're imagining. The rules of play generate events, and you write how the character reacts to them. Yeah, okay. Okay. Now, I'm not really going to talk about the end game, because I doubt we'll make it to there. If we get to it, I'll bring it up. But I am going to make one deviation from how the game works. So the way that the game normally works is you write your first entry, which is where we're going to start, which is where we establish character. We are going to do that together, chat. But we write our first entry, and then we start pulling cards from the deck. And based on the cards we pull, we get little prompts. I mean, anyone who's watched these streams before knows them. Prompts tell us things like you can see on the screen right now. It says hearts, and it has it all the way up to 10 because the face cards are a bit different. Hearts are keepsakes, curiosities, and crude salvage. So like it might be I walked around the beach today, and if we got a 6 of hearts, I found some old furniture. Like, and then we sort of build on that in the context of ghosts haunting us. So that part isn't new. But what is a bit different is, first of all, this dice, or this Jenga tower, when we pull a card, sometimes we have to pull Jenga from it. And then the other thing that's different, and the thing that we're going to do a bit differently than normal, is this card. This card's called the Ace of Hearts. Now, technically, you're supposed to wait as a per chance to find it. But I'm going to tell you why I'm pulling it out, because I don't think the game really has much thrust without it. When you pull an Ace of Hearts, what it represents is a stack of ship manifests, which means the list of everyone who was on a ship that wrecked, presumably, that were put away by the previous Lightkeeper. The assumption we make is that at least 10 people from those manifests are the spirits that haunt our lighthouse. Those people are represented Those people are represented by these coins. So these are lost spirits that we found in our manifest that was stacked here by the previous lighthouse keeper. And you stack them on the card like that. At the end of every day, we roll a dice. If it comes up a 6, or under some conditions a 5 or a 6, we can try to free one of those spirits. If we manage to free all 10 of the spirits, we win the game. Extraordinarily unlikely. So, don't plan on that being the outcome today, because most of the outcomes are bad. So that's the only difference I'm making, but that also gives you an idea of the kind of things that the cards represent. Beyond that, I'll just play the game. I mean, if anybody has any questions, or if the person who requested this has any questions, feel free to drop it in chat. I will address them. But that's the core of the game. We will roll a dice for a round of play. A round covers a week. The dice tells me how many cards I have to draw. And we have this manifest of spirits we're going to try and free. Okay. And if you're the kind of person who did not care about any of those rules, well, you can help me do the writing all the same. That was more for the person who made the request. But let me take a look at the chat, and then we'll get to our first entry. Heather says it was 10:36 there. Oof. That's even later than Eastern. Big Drew is here. Hello, Big Drew. Good to see you again. Heather says she feels welcome. Actually, I shouldn't be presumptuous. They feel welcome. Big Drew says, oh, fragile Jenga Tower of Sanity. I am holding ever so tightly to my final base block for fear that it may topple myself asunder. Yes. Oh, Heather had to go. Well, hopefully it was nothing I did. But if it was, I apologize. Okay. So for the rest of you who do not care about the rules and just want to see how it plays, let's write a story. Let's write a story. Okay, so the first entry doesn't require any cards or anything. Let's just go through it. I call this a gentle knock upon the window, a playthrough of Lighthouse at the End of the World. So the basics of play are this. The first thing we do is we flip a coin. This is just for the prologue letter, where we figure out a character. That is tails. The 1 is a tails. This little kraken symbol is a heads. Tails. Now, why are we flipping a coin? The first entry will act as a sort of prologue. Begin by flipping your coin. Heads indicates you're writing letters to someone at home. Tails means no one is waiting for you. Okay, so the first thing we know about our character, no one is waiting for us. Okay. Now the next thing we do is we start writing our letter. Now I'm sort of Cole's noting it, but we put a date. I've already decided a date. We give a greeting. We give her port of origin, which they give a roll chart for. I'm going to do because I don't know ports. And then we will flip a coin again, and it will tell us how long ago we arrived here, which I can do now as well. But the thing I want you, chat, to start thinking about, this is our first letter, I guess, to no one. So maybe a journal entry or whoever comes and takes over our post in the future. I want you to consider why this character we're playing took the post out in the end of the world. I want you to think of some rumors of what happened to the last Lightkeeper that you're replacing. We will mention the penal colony. I don't need any input on that. We'll just mention it. And we need to talk a little bit about our hopes for the future and mention something about spooky incidents. So this is us constructing the first prologue or letter or journal entry or however you want to think of it. There's some stuff there you can help with, chat. I'm going to flip a coin, find out how long we were here. It's tails again, which means we've been here for 1 month, and it means I have to pull 3 blocks out of this tower. You can see how awkward this is going to be. Like, if we make it without knocking this tower over, I'll be amazed. Now, one part of the game is sometimes you replace, just like classic Jenga, you place this the wood back on top. But sometimes you don't. If it doesn't say anything, you assume you place it on top. If it does, then you don't. Ugh. Nope. If I bin it now, we have, like, nothing to do. I don't like how fast I'm running out of easy ones. So I flipped a coin. The coin came up tails. That means we've been in this lighthouse for a month. And being in a lighthouse with spooky occurrences for a month cost me 3 blocks of sanity. Beyond that, let's get to the writing. Like I said, I'm starting with the assumption that we already found the manifest. Jenna says that was nerve-wracking watching you pull pieces. Let me tell you, it was nerve-wracking to do. I am going to assume we already found the manifest, so that's something I'm going to mention in this letter. You don't have to play it that way, but I think that'll play better for the stream. Okay. To whomever it may concern. By the way, this system is not unique to this solo tabletop RPG. This system is called Wretched and Alone. There was another game that played with it, with the Jenga tower and everything, this kind of system, that I wanted to play on stream, but it was a bit extreme. It was about living in like a wasteland, and it had prompts like, you know, you had to cut a man's neck to live. What do you feel as the blood runs out? And I was like, all right, this is a bit much. Okay. To whomever it may concern. I have been here. I'm going to try and be a little more terse with these, because normally I just, well, I faff. Let's be honest. I'm a writer. I've been here for nearly a month, and I'm not sure I've had a straight night's sleep. The rain comes in patches, so strong. The drops sound like tapping at the windows. This place gets under your skin like that. You'll be closing a door at night and swear someone is out on the rocks watching. But there never is. Gia says, I don't think DoorDash delivers to the end of the world. I'm going to make an add-on segment for this game. This is about a guy who has to DoorDash to this place. He's just not into it at all. Like this guy who's like, eyes are flitting around and don't you hear them? And he's like, no, bud, but like, you didn't choose the prepay option? Okay, I've covered how long we've been. Oh, point of origin. So the point of origin is like the last page in here. There's a whole dynamic about drawing on maps and stuff, but you really don't have to do it. And I'm not sure what it adds. So I'm not really going to engage with it here. Sorry if that's not great. So the way we pick a ship name, which will come up several times. Ships come up often, obviously, but the main reason you want a ship name in a port is the ship you came in on and the port you came from. So that's a 5, 2, and a 1 for 8. So the ship's name is Trey Kroner. Well, that's not my favorite name. Let's call it the Radiant. That's a 9. And the port city is 11. That is Petite Gaul. I like that. Okay, so the Radiant. It's been nearly a month since I rode that rust bucket they call the Radiant from Port. What was it? Petite Gaul. I'm not sure I've had a straight night's sleep since I watched that miserable floating measurable old boat turn back over the horizon. Do we have a kitty who perceives our lost souls? Now that's an interesting idea. What would be the kitty's name then? The rain comes in patches so strong the drops sound like tapping at the windows. This place gets under your skin like that. You'll be closing a door at night and swear someone is out there on the rocks watching it, but there never is. Though I can't help but wonder if the box, if the chest of ship manifests I found might contain a name such shadows will answer to. The manifests were not my own collection. Nor did they wash ashore. Instead, they were under some loose floorboards left by the previous keeper, I assume. Call the kitty Raptor. And Jenna says Shadow Raptor. Okay. Left by the previous keeper, I assume. What are the rumors of what happened to the last keeper, chat? That was something I asked a little earlier, and I am curious what you'll come up with. God knows what happened to him exactly. The rumors are, and then I'm going to leave that blank. So chat can fill that in. I'm going to move on to, I now sip my thin tea and watch the lamps dim at the penal colony. Not far. Just barely east of me. Jenna says the last GS says Shadow is way better, Rory. Okay, there's a lot of votes for Shadows. The last keeper fell prey to a siren. But how, like, we wouldn't know that exactly. So how would that come across as a rumor? Like, what would be said? What was maybe seen by someone at the penal colony or something like that? I now sip my thin tea and watch the lamps dim at the penal colony as it settles in for the night. I must admit, being so far out, yet far out from decent folk, and so close to the criminal classes, is more unsettling than an errant figure in the corner of my eye. Tomorrow, I'll do some work patching the dock after the last storm. Okay, first entry. In, out, let's go. Not that that was super quick, but now we can get to the good stuff. So that was July 15th, 1886. Or sorry, June 15th, 1886. So this will be June 16th. Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, that's right. Let's see what we got here. I see that Big Drew is writing a story, and as per usual, I will sort of let him work, and we'll go over it at the very end. But if you are looking in the chat, you could read along with it. Okay. Jenna says, maybe they saw him go outside on nightly walks. I don't think he actually fell prey to a silent bit. Maybe it's more superstitious people in the colony believe that. Oh, okay. I'm going to build on that a bit. The rumors are some strange song won him over to an evil end. Prisoners, a few guards that I had for dinner when I arrived spoke of the former keeper's nightly walks. They said a siren of some sort drew him to drown and wash up on their shore. Obvious hogwash, of course. He was clearly just of weak mind and incapable of handling such solitude. June 16th, 1886. The cat was at the door today. The island is small. Maybe only only 10, maybe only 100 paces in any direction. Maybe only 100 paces in any direction. But somehow Shadow squirrels off for a day or two at a time and returns smelling fish blood. Okay, now technically the way it works is you make a journal entry every week, but we may not have that much time. So we're going to kind of take it little shorter ones day by day. What you do is you roll again. You roll a d6. I rolled a 4. What that means is this week, 4 notable things will happen. The way that I know what those things will be is I blind draw 4 cards. One, I'm going to pull from different parts because I don't trust my dice or my shuffling capabilities. 2, 3, 4. Okay. You don't look at the cards. You're going to reveal them one by one, but I have here 4 cards. I'm going to look away so everyone knows what they are, but I don't know. Okay. So I'm going to stack these cards. And then I'm going to turn the first one, and that's going to tell me what happened. It is a 2 of clubs, which I believe is a good thing. It's one of the only good things that can happen. Okay. So clubs represent maintenance of the self or otherwise. So it's a good thing. And I pulled a 2, so it says, what strange new sleeping habit have you picked up since your arrival? Now this, I realize it's taken us longer than normal to get here, but this is, chat, where ya shine. What new sleeping habit have we picked up since our arrival here? I'm going to give you guys a minute. I'm going to have a drink of water, and then we'll carry on. I still suspect the little rodent catcher is getting better sleep on the damp rocks of this southerly isle. Oh, what a creative one. Jenna says he drinks turmeric spiced warm milk now before bed. And then GS says, and it makes him dream too much. Ah. Dreams are writers' favorite things because you can put obscure symbolism and you don't have to explain it. In my last order for supplies, I decided to listen to my mother, God rest her soul, and try some goat's milk boiled with a spoon of turmeric. It certainly isn't much for flavor. It tastes of the grass the goats eat, to be honest. To be frank. But she insisted it was a reliable cure for a farmer's sleepless nights. Big Drew says he has night terrors about the cat in all capitals. Are we gonna make the cat the villain? I suspect it is not working. However, since the only noticeable change in my sleep has been vivid nightmares of the cat growing into a grotesque and bloated figure just shy the height of a proper man in pounding on my window with wide yellow eyes. The fatigue of these sleepless nights made my progress on the dock slow. I made some tea at dinner and fell asleep until about midnight. I doubt it's the milk doing it, but maybe after this batch I should do without. Okay, I'm going to go to the next entry. Like I said, I'm going to do quicker entries here because it's meant to cover a week. This could be a couple of days later too. So I'm going to flip the card. Remember, we pulled 4 cards. I flipped 1. This card is a 9 of hearts. So let's see what else happened this week. One of the cool things in this Solo Tabletop RPG is they do give you a link to the creator made a playlist to help set the ambience. I did consider doing it. I did consider having like the ocean in the background, and I did consider finding some moody music. The real problem is I can't use the playlist they come up with because it's all copyrighted music. But I do think that's a cool idea. I think that's clever. I think if you're playing alone and you're doing these prompts, like I'm trying to keep it a little bit light and relaxing since we're not deep into Halloween, but I think this can definitely be very moody. Okay, so 9 of hearts. Now, one thing I will say is the premise of the game is that we just know there's ghosts here, and we have interactions with them. That's where you're supposed to start. But I always feel like the fun part of a ghost story is that interlude where they're not sure what's happening. And, you know, what's real and what's not. So that's why I've chosen to make my character a bit more skeptical and not so sure about it. So again, hearts are keepsakes, curiosities, and crude salvage. And the important thing about hearts, which is why you want to kind of store them separately, is hearts. Items that you find with hearts will be associated to the names that you find. Remember our coins. Which reminds me, I have to roll a dice to see if we can free a spirit. We cannot. But we got a 9 of hearts. So that means... Ooh. Okay, so here we go. This is a perfect one to have pulled. We found on the beach a child's toy. What toy? Keeping in mind this is 1886. And here's the question that the prompt asks. Why does it pain you to think of children and their playthings? Chat, we're playing this character together. Why does finding a child's toy pain us? Is it something that happened in our childhood? Is it something we feel guilty about from recently? And I have to pull from the tower because it affects my sanity to have found this. So, chat, you figure out what the toy is and why we pay it, or at least give me some ideas. And then I will find out if this is the end of the stream. Oh, God, it doesn't help that my flexibility in this direction has gotten much worse. This one's a little tight. All right. Our brain... Ooh. I don't think that's going to show up on screen, but that wobbled more than I wanted it to. Our brain is becoming increasingly unstable. So this will be, I'm going to say it's 2 days later. Maybe we found it the next day, but I didn't want to write about it right away. What I am going to do, though, is I'm going to roll a d6 as well. No, nothing. Jenna says, a small doll with wool yarn pigtails. It pains us because it reminds us of our daughter who passed away due to typhoid fever. I'm going to pull something from a story I'm writing elsewhere. So if you guys do, I'm hoping to have it out in like a month or so. If you guys do read that story, you will notice that it has a premise that's similar to it. But just know that, well, look, the well's only so deep. I got to take ideas where I have them. But here's what it'll be. I did not make a log. Make a log sounds like pooping, so let's pick another one. I did not put an entry in this journal yesterday. I could barely stop my hand from shaking. I heard the cry of a young girl out on the from under the southerly outcrop. Where the current is swift. I ran, for it was so vivid. And when I slid down the bank into the icy sea, my hand was gripped by a small pale blue hand in panic. It dug its fingernails into me, and I pulled with all my might from the tide. Well, a doll. I don't understand what I saw or how okay. Jenna says if we want our childhood like GS suggestion, so to make it our childhood, we could say it's our sister. Sure. How I perceived it as a young girl's hand. But it was, and I'm going to use your description, Jenna, a small doll with worn pigtails. Wool yarn pigtails. I suppose a stronger man than I would brush off the delusions of isolation, but the hand being so cold and the doll being as it was could do nothing else but remind me of my sister. The morning we found her finally taken from the agony of the typhoid fever. I remember I spent a day lost in memories of my parents arguing on finances. They had to choose meals or the care of doctors. And despite that terrible choice, it all meant nothing in the end. I did not sleep last night. I think that's why I saw a girl watching me from the window around midnight. In fact, I see her now. She stares at me. People are liking the spooky. Okay, let's, we got 2 more cards. I would very much like to get through 1 week, so we're gonna have 2 more cards. We're on June 18th. At the end, I will talk about sort of win conditions and losing conditions, and then sort of my overall opinion of the game for the person who requested this. Before I decide on how many days it's been, it's a Jack of Diamonds. So, diamonds are the past intrudes. Face cards, too, are generally a bad thing. So, for example, if you get all 4 kings, you lose. As much as this is a game. It's not really a traditional game in that sense. Jack of Diamonds. The ghosts slither their fingers into your psyche and play act a dormant memory they find there. Chat, what memory do the spirits draw up into our memories? Pull from the tower, but do not replace, which means I don't put it back on top. Oh boy. Well, this could be the end. Let's find out. I may have taken all the easy ones already. Anybody? Anybody? Oh. Oh. Maybe? Ooh. Just about shoved it over there. God, I do not have steady hands. I gotta put that more gentle on top. For some reason, that top is wobbly. Okay, the ghosts slither their fingers into your psyche. You play act a dormant memory they find there. What does this play? I'm gonna have a drink of water. I'm curious what chat will recommend. All right. So it was 1 day and then 2 days passed. Okay, so let's say it's been 3 days. GS says this memory should be related to the sister tragedy. Yeah. And I think, by the way, if anybody is, still watching this and still trying to figure out what is the point of these streams and what is the point of solo tabletop RPGs and games around writing at all, this is it. You find little bits of things and then you start weaving them together. D&D and Pathfinder and more full-throated group or tabletop RPGs are the same way. You kind of just follow these little prompts and you try things out, and then myself anyways as a DM, the job is to try and stitch that together into a cohesive narrative, and that's a lot of writing. I guess what I'm saying is, if your perception of writing is that you need to have a full concept of a story before you write, you're never really going to write anything. What this show is really about is to show you that the process of writing is just about doing it. And in the process, you find stuff. Like his sister. How he got her exposed to contaminated water. Is that where typhoid comes from? I literally know nothing about it other than I think it's called yellow fever. Yeah, I mean, is it something you can just get by swimming? Maybe she didn't want to swim and he shoved her in? Ooh, I like that too, Jenna. GS says the ghost in the past. It doesn't need to be the ghost in the past. The ghosts are trying to drive you mad because they're kind of vicious. So the ghosts of now are using your memories against you is the premise here. I broke into the whiskey. The tapping on the windows. It's too scheduled. It can't be the rain. I bet it's the girl. No, it's not the girl. It's the madness of a secluded, guilty, and tired mind. So I broke into the whiskey. And drank myself asleep. If these are spirits, which I know they're not, I figured they could do no harm to the material. I drifted off into the blackness of a drunken sleep. And was by a river with my sister again. We would fish together. Under cerulean skies. Somewhere in the countrysides. It was a warm memory, as warm as the whiskey in my belly. Then she turned to me while I prepped a jelly sandwich for our picnic. And she had a face stained yellow with bloodshot eyes and screamed. The stupor was so deep, I couldn't pull myself out and back awake. The ground about us caved away. And I was possessed by something to shove her into that fateful pool, the one so deep, but still that we were told never to touch. She screamed her feverish scream. As I laughed uncontrollably and threw her in the water. A memory I wish was merely a dream. I thought she might have smelled a bit, and her dress may have stained green. I did not understand that the city dumped things there. It was the cat, Shadow, that yelled loudly with the dawn and woke me from my terrible sleep. I have not had sleep now for the better part of 3 days. GS says they were innocently playing in a questionable pawn that he knew better to go in. Oh, okay, so we were on the same wavelength because that's what we did. Okay, last card. Last card. I know we're going a little long, but it is a 4 of diamonds, which I don't think bodes well for us. You brought your favorite book to read and reread during your time here. What is it? What makes it special to you? This feels tonally weird. But I'm going to roll a dice and see if we can't free a ghost. Hey! That is a 6. Okay, let's free a ghost. We can, of course, ignore the prompt if we want, but we could have him release this little girl. You brought your favorite book. Keep that in mind, but I'm going to talk a little bit about how you free a ghost. So this is where the manifest comes in. Remember, the manifest is represented by the Ace of Hearts. It was left here by the last lighthouse keeper. The poker tokens here represent the ghosts, and this is one that we can release. So I'm going to read you what it says about releasing a spirit, or putting it to rest, in other words. Laying a ghost to rest. When you roll a 6, which we did, You uncover the origin of one of the ghosts, which allows you to end its suffering, and consequently a measure of your own. I don't know if I'll be able to give a whole backstory to a ghost, but we'll do my best. You may take as much or as little time and care with this step as you like. That too says something about your character. Whatever. I don't know. These solo tabletop RPGs say things like that all the time. First, take out your map to chart the course of the Ghost's Doom Voyage. This is the part I'm not going to do, but there's a map there. You can use the 3d6 to figure out a point of origin. You flip a coin. It tells you if the port is warm or cold. You track the journey up to the point, and then a dotted line for the journey they weren't able to take when they crashed. So on and so forth. Yada yada. I'm not really going to do any of that because I don't feel much about it will work on stream, but I think it works fine enough if you're on your own. But it does say if you cannot or would rather not draw on a map, simply list these facts together instead. If you've drawn any heart cards, pick the piece of salvage tied to the ghost. If not, make up your own. But we did draw a heart card, and the salvage that we found was the little doll. So that's hers. Name the ghost. Consider what you'll write about them in today's missive. Then remove a token from the Ace of Hearts and put the ghost to rest. And continue your vigil. Okay. So, we need a name. We've decided that it's a little girl who drowned. We're going to be reading a book as a moment of self-care. What should be our little ritual we do to put it to rest? So I think maybe as he's reading the book, he sees a name and the spirit sort of communicates with him. And he realizes that's her name. Maybe he can bury the doll and put the ghost to rest. This will be, let's say, June 22nd. Kathleen. Maybe he's reading a storybook. Well, that's a good idea. I wouldn't have thought of that. I like the idea of, like, it's a children's book. It is. I would not write about this were it not integral to the fantastical things I have witnessed today. For many years, I have bore in all luggage I have packed a small book of tales for children. It is a quiet comfort, something I consider reflective of my own character flaws. But as you shall see, it was key to the events. I hadn't... Oh God, do I have enough time for this? I have the story in my head now, but do I have enough time? I hadn't seen Shadow in a day or two. I don't remember the last time I said it. And I felt more and I was... Don't say so. Well, felt. Felt is not necessary. And I was concerned. I heard something fall down, but I don't know where it was. Let's hope it didn't matter. And I was concerned the cat may be in trouble. So I left the door open. Just a crack. Well into the twilight hours. I was fixing my tea when I became aware that something was standing in the small circular lighthouse with me. I turned slowly, careful not to startle anything unknown into savagery, and saw the horrid blue and distended face of a drowned little girl with white eyes. I'm not sure why I noticed this and did not scream, but she wasn't looking at me. Instead, she was curious, I think, about the book on my table. I decided to be bold and said, "Perhaps a story, my dear. It often brings rest to the young." She looked at me with a face ravaged by the sea, its rot, and its fauna. But I could still read a nod. So I read this wraith a story, and by glory, or the guiding hand of some unseen guardian, I read The Teapot and Dear Kathleen. And it spoke. The little girl spoke her only words. "That's me," she gurgled from frothing lungs. When the story was done, I looked up, and where she had been, there remained only the doll. So I took that doll and buried it so well as I could on this rocky lump, whispering a prayer of rest to dear Kathleen. I even found her name in those old manifests. She was headed for Hawaii, I think, but must have wrecked. Shortly after her departure. From the ports in Chile. The cat sat with me during this. Seemed to chase some unseen thing. Like how it chases my ankles. During my tea prep. I slept last night. I still heard the tapping, but I do feel lighter. There we go. We freed a ghost. Jenna says, I hoped that reading her a story would be how this got resolved. Oh, well then that's great. Worked out. Jenna says they were crying, hopefully in a joyful way. And GS says reading her story was such a perfect closure. Well, thank you. Okay, so let's read that back, and then we'll take a look at Drew's story, and we'll call it a day. See what we came up with. Also, I'll give a couple of my thoughts on the game overall, which I don't normally do, but since somebody asked me to play this game, I feel obligated. All right. So what we did in this game is we played a game called A Lighthouse at the End of the World, and I'll show you that cover again, which is the title of a Jules Verne book about the same lighthouse, which is a real lighthouse that is pretty much about as southerly as you can get. It's in a place called, double check that, the San Juan del Salvamento Lighthouse, are commonly called Farol del Fin del Mundo. I do not speak these languages, which operated on Isla de los Estados off the coast of Tierra del Fuego from 1884 to 1900. The lighthouse was, among other things, the inspiration for Jules Verne's novel, the same name, where it was also adjacent to a penal colony. Anyways, this is a tabletop RPG. That's just the setting, and in that setting, the many wrecked boats that come up at the southerly end of the world there are leave behind some spirits that haunt us. And so we're going to look at some journal entries that start from the first month, our impressions, and then we sort of get into a story as we go along. And this Jenga tower here shows that our sanity stayed intact. That's our sanity meter. This is definitely not the right music. Let's get better music here. There we go. June 15th, 1886. To whomever it may concern. I've been here for nearly a month since I rowed that rust bucket they call the Radiant from Port Petite Gall. I'm not sure I've had a straight night's sleep since I watched that miserable old boat turn back over the horizon. The rain comes in patches so strong the drops sound like tapping at the window. This place gets under your skin like that. You'll be closing a door at night and swear someone is out on the rocks watching. But there never is when you go to look. Though I can't help but wonder if the chest of ship manifests I found might contain a name such shadows will answer to. The manifests were not my own collection, nor did they wash ashore in my time here. Instead, they were under some loose floorboards, I presume left by the previous keeper. God knows what happened to him exactly. The rumors are some strange song won him over to an evil end. A few guards that I had for dinner when I first arrived here, over from the penal colony, spoke of the former keeper's nightly walks. They said a siren of some sort drew him to drown and wash up on their shore. Obvious hogwash, of course. He was clearly just of weak mind and incapable of handling such solitude. I now sip my thin tea and watch the lamps dim at the penal colony as it settles in for the night. I must admit, being so far out from decent folk and so close to the criminal classes is more unsettling than an errant figure in the corner of my eye. Tomorrow I'll do some work patching the dock after the last storm. June 16th, 1886. The cat, Shadow, was at the door today. The island is small, maybe only 100 paces in any direction, but somehow Shadow squirrels off for a day or two at a time and returns smelling of fish blood. I still suspect the rodent catcher is getting better sleep on the damp rocks of this southerly isle than I. In my last order to that end, in my last order for supplies, I decided to listen to my mother's advice, God rest her soul, and try some goat's milk, boiled with a spoon of turmeric. It certainly isn't much for flavor. It tastes of the grass the goats eat, to be frank, but she insisted it was a reliable cure for a farmer's sleepless nights. I suspect it is not working, however, since the only noticeable change in my sleep has been vivid nightmares of the cat growing into a grotesque and bloated figure, just shy of the height of a proper man, and pounding on my window with wide yellow eyes. The fatigue of these sleepless nights made my progress on the dock slow today, so I made some tea at dinner and fell asleep until about midnight. I doubt it's the milk causing the nightmares, but maybe after this batch, I should do without. June 18th, 1886. I did not put an entry in this journal yesterday. I could barely stop my hand from shaking. It started when I heard a cry of a young girl from under the southerly outcrop, where the current is swift. I ran, for it was so vivid, and when I slid down the bank into the icy sea, my hand was gripped by a small, pale blue hand in a panic. It dug its fingernails into me, and I pulled with all my might to yank it from the tide. But what I pulled wasn't a girl. It was a doll. I don't understand what I saw or how I perceived it as a young girl's hand, but it was a small doll with wool yarn pigtails. Now, I suppose a stronger man than I would brush off the delusions of isolation, but the hand being so cold and the doll being as it was, I could do nothing else but remind me of my sister. Specifically on the morning we found her, finally taken from the agony of her typhoid fever. I spent that whole day lost in memories of my parents arguing on finances. They had to choose meals or the care of doctors. They had not enough money for both. And despite that terrible choice, which brought much hunger, it all meant nothing in the end. So I did not sleep last night. And I think that's why I saw a girl watching me from the window around midnight. In fact, in the dawn hours, I see her still. She's staring at me. I dare not move. June 21st, 1886. I broke into the whiskey. The tapping on the windows, it's too scheduled. It can't be the rain. I bet it's that girl. No, it's not the girl. It's the madness of a secluded, guilty, and tired mind. I broke into the whiskey and I drank myself to sleep. If these are spirits, which I know they are not, I figured they could do no harm to my material self. So I drifted off into the blackness of a drunken sleep and was in that dream and woke in a dream of a river sitting with my sister again. It was a river we would fish together under cerulean skies somewhere in the countryside. It was a warm memory, as warm as the whiskey in my belly. She turned to me while I prepped a jelly sandwich for our picnic, but she had a face stained yellow with bloodshot eyes punched into it, and she screamed. My drunken stupor was so deep I couldn't pull myself out and back awake. The ground about us caved away, and I was possessed by something to shove her into that familiar and fateful pool. The one so deep but still that we were told never to touch it. The one out back our house. She was screaming her feverish scream as I laughed uncontrollably and threw her in the water. It's a memory I wish was merely a dream. When I'd done it as a boy, I thought she might have smelled a bit and her dress may have stained green from that old water. I didn't understand that the city dumped things there. Anyways, it was Shadow, the cat, that yelled loudly with the dawn and woke me from that terrible sleep, saved me from the nightmare and its conclusions. So I have not had sleep now for the better part of 3 days. June 22nd, 1886. I would not write about this were it not integral to the fantastical things I have witnessed today. For many years I have bore in all luggage I have packed a small book of tales for children. It is a quiet comfort, something I consider reflective of my own character flaws, but as you shall see, it was a key to the events that follow. Now, I hadn't seen Shadow the cat in a day or two. I was concerned he might be in trouble, so I left the door open just a crack, well into the twilight hours, later than normal. I was fixing my nightly tea when I became aware that something was standing in the small circular lighthouse with me. I turned slowly, careful not to startle anything unknown into savagery, and I saw the horrid blue and distended face of a drowned little girl with pale white eyes. I'm not sure why I noticed her gaze and did not scream, but I did see she was not looking to me. Instead, she seemed almost curious, I think, about the book on my table. So I decided to be bold and said, "Perhaps a story, my dear, often brings rest to the young." She looked at me with a face indeed ravaged by the sea, its rot and its fauna, but I could still read a nod. So I read this Wraiths story, and by glory or the guiding hand of some unseen guardian, I read The Teapot and Dear Kathleen. And it spoke. The little girl spoke her only words. "That's me." She gurgled from frothing lungs. And when the story was done, I looked up, and where she had been, there remained only the doll. So I took that doll and buried it so well as I could on this rocky lump, whispering a prayer of rest to dear Kathleen. I even found her name in the old manifests. She was headed to Hawaii with her family. Must have wrecked shortly after her departure from the ports in Chile. The cat sat with me during this and seemed to chase some unseen thing, like how it chases my ankles during my tea prep. I slept last night. I still hear the tapping, but I do feel lighter. All right, let's cheer ourselves up with some beach stream music. And let's see what Drew wrote. My God, it is 1 hour and a half into the stream. It was a long stream, folks. I apologize if you have other things to do. So this is Big Drew, one of our regular viewers. He puts his own stuff in the chat. I was napping in my rest chamber in the lighthouse. It was the 29th of September. I'd been on watch near 4 months. At 3:27 in the morning, a knock rang loudly across the door of the tower. I puzzled a moment before checking the door. Naught but endless cracks of thunder, and the unceasing flashes of the pounding and driving rain and the howl of wind. The squall was afoot, but my steel and stone fortress would keep me safe until my 6-month hitch is up. I rode out to this godforsaken desolate rock in the wake of a divorce, but the pay was good, because the pay was good, and that woman took everything but the air in my lungs. I began to wonder, however, if my sanity would survive this 6-month hitch. I've already found hordes of bones from the last few keepers, and I'm ill-prepared to defend myself from whatever the hell slayed all those men before me. Oh, cool, hook. I like it. I checked the light and returned to the rest chamber, praying to see the light of another day as the stone and steel of the tower above me sways and creaks in the gale. And then it says, weeks pass. I'm now just 5 days from departure. Good thing, too, rations are nearly depleted. I've little but canned beans. Oh, that's the real horror. Canned beans. And dehydrated potato buds to eat. Thankfully, the galley is equipped with a desalinator. Fresh water, a cassette of The Dark Side of the Moon. Awesome. Great album. Bland, tasteless rations, and a roiling sea. What more could a guy ask for? 5 nights left, then I get to see my... Oh, right, the divorce. And it says, days pass. Big Drew says, where is that damn helicopter? I'm meant to leave here today. Just a second. Come on, where did it go? Never have I been so eager to climb a rope ladder into a machine that held aloft by thin rotating blades. A phone rings. That's what killed all those men in the bone horde. I'm not sure if a message is missing there, or if it's sort of left to imply. As the next few days passed, I accepted my fate as the caregiver for this tower. Maybe it was the delusions of hunger or the tattered phrase of my remaining sanity, but I swear I saw her face in the clouds. Final entry. I've been on this rock and in this tower for, I've lost track, it must be near 6 years at this point. I've etched a message into the stone wall outside the door. Tell Lucy I love her. Oh, I see what's happening. Tonight I draw my final breath and take my place among the bones of my predecessors. Farewell, world. My body may stay on this rock forever, but my spirit is never to return. The end. Very cool. Big Drew says, what a wonderful story, Rory. Thank you for sharing. Well, thank you for your wonderful story, Big Drew. Thank you for sharing. Thank you, Jenna, for your wonderful ideas, and Gias for your wonderful contributions. And of course, if you are watching this later, Heather, thank you for dropping by. It's good to see you. If you're watching this later, and if you were the fellow, or the person, anyways, I don't actually know, who requested that I do this game, thank you for the cool suggestion. I'm just going to give my final comments on sort of this as a game, because they were considering purchasing it. I think overall it is one of the better structured solo tabletop RPGs I've played. It skirts a lot of my complaints about indie tabletop RPGs. It explains itself. It has examples. I really like that. It does have substantial mechanics. They aren't too fiddly, and they do give you a meaningful connection to play, and I do like that. I have one criticism of it, and that is I don't understand why it's $10. In the market of itch.io games, $10 is a lot. Like the entire Wander Home tabletop RPG, which is a very thorough book full of original art, is about $10 usually. Prices fluctuate. So for a 20-page thing that has about 4 to 6 pages of actual content to it, I do wonder. And I think if you are the creator and you have stumbled across this, I think your game is good enough to ask $10, but I do think that there should be maybe some alternate charts, or some added stuff, like just a few more pages of things, maybe some character archetypes or something like that would make me feel that it was a little bit more worth it. I do understand, I do publish things, so I do understand that there's custom art in it, there's layout, there's editing, I do understand that. But that's the only thing I can really say against it. Other than that, it is one of the better ones I've played. I like its structure. I really like this system, although this is not really specific to this tabletop RPG, but I do like this system of Sanity. This is a game that plays well in a longer time frame. If you guys are interested in playing it, I will have it in a pinned comment down below. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Drew. Thank you, GS. Thank you, Jenna. Get out of my tower, you spirits in my head.